We should be live now, y'all. Okay. All right, y'all. What's today? Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, everybody. All right, beautiful people. Let's see if we get through the last few pages of this book today. Happy Wednesday, happy Wednesday. It is August the 25th, 2021, day 242 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 911, 911, right? All right, y'all. So we're reading Daniel 5, 6, and 7. And we're going to pick up in Fossilized Customs where we left off at yesterday on page 357. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and do the Shema. Okay. Lisa, shalom, shalom. Okay, y'all. Shayla, hey, girl, hey. All right, y'all. Remember the Shema is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6, and we start at verse 3. Remember, go read the whole chapter so you can see everything. I just kind of pulled all the meat and potatoes out. But it is a full chapter. So go read it when you get a chance so you can see everything. I pulled just the gist of everything out, right? Keeping it in its proper context. Here. Therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuwah, the mighty one of our fathers, has promised us in the land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah, our mighty one, he is one. And when they say he is one, he's one. He's not multiple. He's not a trinity. He's not a duality. He is one. He kept repeating this to his people. Remember, my people, I'm one. I'm not scattered. Perfect unity. The same way you should be only united to me, right? A perfect marriage, right? Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah, our mighty one, he is one. And you shall love Yahuwah, your mighty one, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart. And you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the posts of your house and on your gates. And Yahuwah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahuwah, our mighty one, for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is at this day. And Yahuwah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear, I'm reading it over again. Well, that's good anyway. To fear Yahuwah, our mighty one, for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is at this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before Yahuwah, our mighty one, as he has commanded us. All right. So, Dream Sky Lover, hey girl, hey. Mom, shalom. Ali, shalom. All right, y'all. Let's pull this up. I love the book of Daniel, y'all. This is my life's calling book. Oh, okay. All right. All right. Daniel chapter 5. The writing on the wall. Many years later, Belshazzar gave a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles, and he drank wine with them. While Belshazzar was drinking the wine, he gave orders to bring in the gold and silver cups that his predecessor, Nebuchadnezzar, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem. He wanted to drink from them with his nobles, his wives, and his concubines. So they brought these gold cups taken from the temple, the house of Yahuwah in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles and his wives and his concubines drank from them. While they drank from them, they praised their idols made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Suddenly, they saw fingers of a human hand writing on the plaster wall of the king's palace near the lampstand. The king himself saw the hand as it wrote, and his face turned pale with fright. His knees knocked together with fear, and his legs gave way beneath him. The king shouted for the enchanters, astrologers, and fortune tellers to be brought before him. He said this to the wise men of Babylon: "Whoever can read this writing and tell me what it means will be dressed in purple robes of royal honor and will have a gold chain placed around his neck. He will become the third highest ruler in the kingdom." But when all the king's wise men had come in, none of them could read the writing or tell him what it meant. So the king grew even more alarmed, and his face turned pale. His nobles, too, were shaken. But when the queen mother heard what was happening, she hurried to the banquet hall. She said to Belshazzar, "Long live the king. Don't be so pale and frightened. There is a man in your kingdom who has within him the spirit of the holy gods. During Nebuchadnezzar's reign, this man was found to have insight, understanding, and wisdom like that of the gods. Your predecessor, the king, your predecessor, King Nebuchadnezzar, made him chief over all the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and fortune tellers of Babylon. This man Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar, has exceptional ability and is filled with divine knowledge and understanding. He can interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Call for Daniel, and he will tell you what the writing means." Hey, son. Daniel explains the writing. So Daniel was brought in before the king. The king asked him, "Are you Daniel, one of the exiles brought from Judah by my predecessor, King Nebuchadnezzar? I have heard that you have the spirit of the gods within you and that you are filled with insight, understanding, and wisdom. My wise men and enchanters have tried to read the words on the wall and tell me their meaning, but they cannot do it. I'm told that you can give interpretations and solve difficult problems. If you can read these words and tell me their meaning, you will be clothed in purple robes of royal honor, and you will have a gold chain placed around your neck. You will become the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Daniel answered the king, "Keep your gifts or give them to someone else, but I will tell you what the writing means." For what Daniel was so wise in doing this, let me tell you something. You can tell Daniel could not be bought, right? "Oh, king, keep all your gifts, right? Give them to somebody else. But I will tell you what this means, right?" Because there you knew where his help came from. If you don't solve the money issue in your life, you will have a purchase price down the line, especially when Yahuwah tries to use you. You will be able to be bribed, which we know is a big no. Because if you can be bribed, you can be bribed to screw with prophecies, screw with the truth. And we don't need that. We need the pure, unadulterated truth, right? Daniel answered the king, "Keep your gifts or give them to someone else. But I will tell you what the writing means. Your Majesty, the Most High God gave sovereignty, majesty, glory, and honor to your predecessor, Nebuchadnezzar. He made him so great that people of all races and nations and languages trembled before him in fear. He killed those he wanted to kill and spared those he wanted to spare. He honored those he wanted to honor and disgraced those he wanted to disgrace. But when his heart and mind were puffed up with arrogance, he was brought down from his royal throne and stripped of his glory. He was driven from human society. He was given the mind of a wild wild animal, and he lived among the wild donkeys. He ate grass like a cow, and he was drenched with the dew of heaven until he learned that the Most High God, Yahuwah, rules over the kingdoms of the world and appoints anyone he desires to rule over them. You are his successor, O Belshazzar, and you knew all this. Yet you have not humbled yourself, for you have proudly defied Yahuwah, the God of heaven, and have had these cups from his temple brought before you. You and your nobles and your wives and your concubines have been drinking wine from them while praising gods of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone, gods that neither see nor hear nor know anything at all. But you have not honored the God that gives you the breath of life and controls your destiny. So Yahuwah has sent this hand to write this message. This is the message that was written. Many, many tekel parson. This is what these words mean. Many means numbered. Yahuwah has numbered the days of your reign and has brought it to an end. Tekel means weighed. You have been weighed on the balances and have not measured up. Parson means divided. Your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then at Belshazzar's command, Daniel was dressed in purple robes, and a gold chain was hung around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, the Babylonian king, was killed, and Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. Second chapter for the day, Daniel chapter 6. Daniel in the lion's den. Oh, look, when we get done reading the book of Daniel, y'all, we're going to go to the Sefer, and we're going to get these missing chapters of Daniel. It's labeled Bel and Dragon and Susanna, right? Y'all heard me the last couple times. I read this when I first got the Sefer. When I saw this in there, I was still kind of like a spooky Christian, right? I'm like, Bel and the Dragon. Oh my gosh, I done ordered some kind of book of witchcraft. But look, I had the Sefer Bible for months after I went through the table of contents and realized, oh, yep, I done ordered the wrong thing. Look, and I prayed the prayer. Y'all was so silly. Let me tell you, I prayed this prayer after I opened it up. It was because I was raised in the church. The church should teach you to be scared of everything instead of going to do your due diligence and check stuff out. I was so scared after I only got through the table of contents. When I saw Bel and the Dragon, I'm like, oh, what is this book out of order? I was like, oh, I closed it up. It came with the little zip cover, so I zipped it up. And I put it downstairs in like the back of my bookcase, and I prayed this prayer. I'm like, Father, first of all, I really, really felt like you told me I needed to order this particular Bible. I said I did. I said, but I just got through the table of contents, and it looked like some kind of witchcraft in this book. And I ain't trying to speak curses into my soul or my household. I said, so I need you to confine this book and everything that's in it, just like confine it. I ain't gonna throw it away yet. I say, but I need you to quarantine this Bible. Don't let anything that's in it seep out into my house. Y'all, I was silly. It took me, after I finished that prayer, I can imagine y'all was like, would y'all look at this girl? I can imagine y'all doing that so many times with me, right? So a few months later, it kept like poking at me. Girl, go get that darn Bible. Go get the Bible. Go get the Bible. Go to the chapters of Bel and the Dragon. Look. So when I finally worked up the courage to actually open it up to the section of the book of Bel and the Dragon, I realized to my delight and utter surprise, I realized that they were missing chapters of the book of Daniel, right? And also after Bel and the Dragon, Susanna. It's missing chapters of the book of Daniel or the scroll of Daniel, right? And when you read that, it gives clarity to some of the things that happens in the book of Daniel as well. So I just want to say that. But when we get done with these 12 chapters of Daniel, we're gonna go right to the Sefer and we're gonna read those chapters. They're really, really short books. Okay. I just wanted to say that. Okay. Daniel in the lion's den. And this is gonna it also talks about Daniel being in the lion's den and how Habakkuk was actually alive. You know, the book of Habakkuk in the Bible. Habakkuk was actually alive during Daniel's time, and he knew, well, he didn't know till Yahuwah told him that Daniel was in the lion's den. So there is a blurb in there about this and what happened while he was in the lion's den, and how Habakkuk came to Daniel while he was there. How the spirit of Yah took Habakkuk to Daniel. It's so good, y'all. If y'all got it, just go. If y'all ain't read it, go read it. We read it last time, but I don't remember which video it was. I probably named it something with Daniel in the lion's den when I read that portion um in the Sefer that talks about this. So if you can't wait till we get to it in a couple days, and just go find that video. It's sometime last year. All right. Just scroll, click on videos on my channel, and just scroll through the videos until you see Daniel Lyons Den or something like that. Right? You'll find it. Daniel in the lion's den. Darius the Mede decided to divide the kingdom into 120 provinces, and he appointed a high officer to rule over each province. The king also chose Daniel and two others as administrators to supervise the high officers and protect the king's interests. Daniel soon proved himself more capable than all the other administrators and high officers. Because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. Then the other administrators and officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. So they concluded our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion. So the administrators and high officers went to the king and said, "Long live King Darius. We are all in agreement, we administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, that the king should make a law that will be strictly enforced. Give orders that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions. And now, your majesty, issue and sign this law so that it cannot be changed, an official law of the Medes and the Persians that cannot be revoked." So King Darius signed the law. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual in his upstairs room with its windows open toward Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. Then the officers went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for Yahuwah's help. So they went straight to the king and reminded him about this law. "Did you not sign a law that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions?" "Yes," the king replied. "That decision stands. It is an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked." Then they told the king, "Well, that man Daniel, the one of the captives from Judah, is ignoring you and your law, and he still prays to his God 3 times a day." Hearing this, the king was deeply troubled, and he tried to think of a way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of this predicament. In the evening, the men went together to the king and said, "Your Majesty, you know that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no law that the king signs can be changed." So at last, the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. The king said to him, "May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone with his own royal seal and the seals of his nobles so that no one could rescue Daniel. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment and couldn't sleep at all that night. Very early the next morning, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he got there, he called out in anguish, "Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God, whom you serve so faithfully, able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "Long live the king. My God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me. For I have been found innocent in his sight, and I have not wronged you, your majesty. The king was overjoyed that Daniel Hold on. The king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be lifted from the den. Not a scratch was found on him, for he had trusted in his God. Then the king gave orders to arrest the men who had maliciously accused Daniel. He had them thrown into the lion's den along with their wives and children. The lions leaped on them and tore them apart before they even hit the floor of the den. Then King Darius sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. Peace and prosperity to you. I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Last chapter for today. I'm really tempted to go get it and read this portion from when Habakkuk came. Hold on, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can grab it so I can finish the story with Daniel. Hold on. And also, y'all, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I also think I gotta look. I think in Building and Dragon. In Legends of the Jews, I think there was a portion in here as well. Hold on. No, that's not that. That's Susanna. Hold on, y'all. Okay, I might have got it mixed up. Which one? Hold on. Daniel. They really short. I'm gonna have to look for it when it might be in Legends of the Jews, y'all. This Susanna. Where is the part? Because I know I got to highlight. This is not highlighted in here. Let me finish reading. Shucks, we might just read this today. Anyway, but there is, hold on. I'm going to have to run my search on my electronic one to find it, y'all. Hold on. Let me finish reading this. Daniel's vision of 4 beasts. Earlier, during the first year of King Belshazzar's reign in Babylon, Daniel had a dream and saw visions as he lay in his bed. He wrote down the dream, and this is what he saw. In my vision that night, I, Daniel, saw a great storm churning the surface of the great sea, with strong winds blowing from every direction. Then 4 huge beasts came up out of the water, each different from the others. The beast was like a lion with eagle's wings. As I watched, its wings were pulled off, and it was left standing with its 2 hind feet on the ground like a human being, and it was given a human mind. Then I saw a second beast, and it looked like a bear. It was rearing up on one side, and its 3 ribs and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And I heard a voice saying to it, "Get up, devour the flesh of many people." Then the third of these strange beasts appeared, and it looked like a leopard. It had 4 birds' wings on its back, and it had 4 heads. Great authority was given to this beast. Then, in my vision that night, I saw a fourth beast, terrifying, dreadful, and very strong. It devoured and crushed its victims with huge iron teeth and trampled their remains beneath its feet. It was different from any of the other beasts, and it had 10 horns. As I was looking at the horns, suddenly another small horn appeared among them. 3 of the first horns were torn out by the roots to make room for it. This little horn had eyes like human eyes and a mouth that was boasting arrogantly. I watched as the thrones were put in place, and the Ancient One sat down to judge. His clothing was as white as snow, his hair like purest wool. He sat on a fiery throne with wheels of blazing fire, and a river of fire was pouring out, flowing from his presence. Millions of angels ministered to him. Many millions stood to attend him. Then the court began its session, and the books were opened. I continued to watch because I could hear the little horn's boastful speech. I kept watching until the fourth beast was killed and its body was destroyed by fire. The other 3 beasts had their authority taken from them, but they were allowed to live a little while longer. As my vision continued that night, I saw someone like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient One and was led into his presence. He was given authority, honor, and sovereignty over all the nations of the world, so that people of every race and nation and language would obey him. His rule is eternal, it would never end. His kingdom will never be destroyed. Now, when you in a church, what happens is they stop reading right here and they take this whole thing and they apply it to JC, right? And that is not who it's talking about. Who did Yahuwah say his son was? Israel. Who is Israel? Let's start at the beginning. Israel was first named Jacob at birth. Clearly, that wasn't his name, but because that's the name everybody familiar with, let's just say he was named Jacob, right? He was named Jacob when he wrestled with the angel. His name was changed to Israel. This is a real person, right? His name was changed to Israel. When he began to have children, his children are now referred to as Jacob, or the sons and daughters of Jacob, or Israel, or the sons and daughters of Israel, right? So this one person became a nation, right? And the 12 tribes are his 12 sons. He had a daughter, but they're counting the sons, the heads, those who will produce more children with the father's bloodline. The women will produce children, but when she gets pregnant, she is helping her mate to reproduce his bloodline. So that doesn't necessarily come from her father's bloodline, although her father's blood is in her, right? And some of her father's blood will be in her children, but her children's bloodline now will be tracked through their father, right? Okay, so that's why the daughter is not, although she is a part, that's why she's not named, because it's the sons who carry the father's blood, right? That can reproduce the father's blood, where the blood can be found and identified in them, right? Okay. So now, Yahuwah says that Israel or Jacob is my firstborn son, right? Where did he say that? He said it in Exodus. Go back and read it. Remember when Moses showed up on the scene? He said, go tell Pharaoh this, go tell Pharaoh this. Let my son go that he may worship me. When he said son, every time Yahuwah uses the word son, he's talking about the whole nation of Israel. Many people, all the descendants that come from Jacob, right? He's talking about all of them. So every time he says son, he's talking about the whole of Israel. So when you get through here, and especially here in this portion right here, when they take Daniel out of its context. Remember, I tell you, you can keep everything in its proper context if you just keep reading, because scripture will interpret scripture itself. And every time Yahuwah gives a vision, or he's speaking in parables or analogies, he always reveals what he's saying, right? He gives you a story or analogy or parable or a maxim, and something that you can understand in your language that day, so you can get the principle he's trying to teach you, right? So when he was giving visions to his prophets, his people, he always uses animals and nature and different things like that, right? Okay, so we're about to see who this one who looked like the Son of Man was, because it's going to tell us clearly that it wasn't a single person. It's a whole kingdom of priests, which descends from Judah, right? Remember, the priestly, the rulership comes from Judah. The son Judah, all of them, King David's lineage, they sit on the throne, they rule, right? So they will be set up over provinces and cities and states and countries, because they're the ruling class. Levi is the priestly class. Like all of these things that we learn, we have to keep it all together, to keep everything in its proper context as we read, right? We can't just leave stuff behind, because you get things all discombobulated and you will become discombobulated yourself, right? Okay. So now the vision is explained. And the one who was sitting on the throne wasn't JC either. It was Yahuwah himself, the ancient one, the judge, right? Okay. And just make sure we all tracking together. The vision is explained. I, Daniel, was troubled by all I had seen, and my visions terrified me. So I approached one of those standing beside the throne, and I asked him what it all meant. He explained it to me like this: these four huge beasts represent four kingdoms that will arrive from the earth. But in the end, the holy people of the Most High will be given the kingdom, and they will rule forever and ever. On back up. Let's go back up. Let's go back up. Let's look at it together, right? Verse 13. As my vision continued that night, I saw someone like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the ancient one and was led into his presence. He was given authority, honor, and sovereignty over all the nations of the world, so that the people of every race and nation and language would obey him. His rule is eternal, it will never end. His kingdom will never be destroyed. Go back down. Let's keep reading a little further. I, Daniel, the vision is explained. I, Daniel, was troubled by all I had seen, and my visions terrified me. So I approached one of those standing beside the throne, and asked him what it all meant. He explained it to me like this: these four huge beasts represent four kingdoms that will arise from the earth. And clearly we know this fourth beast is the beast Rome system. That's the fourth beast that's ruling. The beast, right? Daniel's beast, the beast system, right? The mark of the beast, the system we in, Rome ruling, right? That's the last, the fourth kingdom. But in the end, the holy people, or the one who looked like the Son of Man, the holy people of the Most High will be given the kingdom, and they will rule forever and ever. Then I wanted to know the true meaning of the fourth beast, the one so different from the others and so terrifying. It had devoured and crushed its victims with iron teeth and bronze claws, trampling their remains beneath its feet. I also asked about the 10 horns on the fourth beast's head, and the little horn that came up afterward and destroyed three of the other horns. This horn had seemed greater than the others, and it had human eyes and a mouth that was boasting arrogantly. As I watched, this horn was waging war against Yahuwah's holy people and was defeating them, until the ancient one, the Most High, came and judged in favor of his holy people. Yes. Yes, it is. Yeah, we'll be going shortly, right? Listen, as I watched, this horn was waging war against Yahuwah's holy people and was defeating them, until the ancient one, the Most High, came and judged in favor of his holy people. Then the time arrived for the holy people to take over the kingdom. Pause. Let's go back up. So all the way when it was talking about the ancient one, right? Right. Verse 9. I watched as thrones were put in place, and the ancient one sat down to judge. His clothing was as white as snow, his hair like purest wool. It's not referring to JC, y'all. He sat on a fiery throne with with wheels of blazing fire, and a river of fire was pouring out, flowing from his presence. Millions of angels ministered to him. Many millions stood to attend him. Then the courts began its session and the books were opened, right? I continued to watch because I could hear the little horn's boastful speech. I kept watching until the fourth beast was killed and its body was destroyed by fire. The other three beasts had their authority taken from them, but they were allowed to live a little while longer. As my vision continued that night, I saw someone like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient One and was led into his presence. He was given authority, honor, and sovereignty over all the nations of the world so that people of every race and nation and language would obey him. His rule is eternal, it will never end. His kingdom will never be destroyed, right? So all you got to do is just kind of go back and forth, right? And you will see that it's Yahuwah who came, he sat, and he began to rule, began to dole out, and began to administer judgment, right? Listen. Let's go back down here to 22, 21. As I watched, this horn was waging war against Yahuwah's holy people and was defeating them until the Ancient One, the Most High, came and judged in favor of his holy people. Then the time arrived for the holy people to take over the kingdom, meaning the kingdom was given to all the holy people, an eternal kingdom that would never end, and they ruled forever. That's Yahuwah's people, right? Then he said to me, verse 23, this fourth beast is the fourth world power that will rule the earth. It will be different from all the others. It will devour the whole world, trampling and crushing everything in its path. Its 10 horns are 10 kings who will rule that empire. Then another king will arise, different from the other 10, who will subdue 3 of them. He will defy the Most High and oppress the holy people of the Most High. He would try to change their sacred festivals and laws, and they will be placed under his control for times, and half a time. This is Antiochus Epiphanes, y'all. If you read Maccabees, First Maccabees, we'll see all that. Matter of fact, we're going to read that first book so we can see. When we get to the end of Daniel, we're going to read that first chapter as well. Maccabees has 4 books. If you've never read it, go read the whole thing. It'll take you a couple days, or you could read it all in a day, just depending on how much time you got and how fast you read, right? Okay. But then the court will pass judgment, and all his power will be taken away and completely destroyed. Then the sovereignty, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be given to the holy people of the Most High. His kingdom will last forever, and all rulers will serve and obey him. That was the end of the vision. I, Daniel, was terrified by my thoughts, and my face, Isaiah, and my face was pale with fear, but I kept these things to myself. All right, beautiful people. So that is our reading for today. Give me 1 second. Let me see. Let me pull out the Legends of the Jews real quick to see if that portion of Daniel.
Okay. Don't listen to Isaiah.
That was Isaiah making all the noise. Hold on, y'all. Joshua. Hold on, y'all. Esther. If I can't find it, I'm gonna have to find it by tomorrow when we come up here so I can read it. See, I really want to read it to y'all today. Hold on.
I woke up first.
Oh, wait, no. Daniel's grave. Hold on.
Nope.
Okay.
Came down at first.
Oh, yeah, so the video. Okay, I found it. Okay. Nebuchadnezzar, a beast. Okay, so, no, I actually read it. Yes, baby.
Did you wake up first?
I
did. Not even that. You were so asleep.
Y'all woke up periodically throughout the night.
I woke in the night because I couldn't sleep.
Okay, well, yeah, technically you woke up during the night, but she woke up too, and she just kind of came and got to bed with us, and everybody woke up throughout the night. We ain't got to argue about who woke up first and second and third. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and read this. I read it back in April the 15th, 2021 was the last time I read through it, right? Okay, so I'm gonna read this part of Daniel so you can see it. All right. No greater contrast to Hiram and the false prophets Ahab and Zedekiah, hey, chill guys, can be imagined than is presented by the character of the pious Daniel.
I think she has that right all to herself.
Look, get what you want out of there, then let them get some. All right? Listen, you take what you want and put it back. Then he'll take what he wants and then he'll put it back. And then he can take what he wants and then he'll put it back, okay?
I'm sorry.
Kids, boy, I feel y'all. Okay, y'all. Back up, y'all. Move. All right. When Nebuchadnezzar offered him divine honors, he refused what Hiram sought to obtain by every means in his power. The Babylonian king felt so ardent and admiration for Daniel that he sent him from the country when the time arrived to worship the idol he had erected in Dura, for he knew very well that Daniel would prefer death in the flames to disregard the commands of Yahuwah, and he could not well have cast the man into the fire whom he had paid divine homage. Moreover, it was the wish of Yahuwah that Daniel should not pass through the fiery ordeal at the same time as his three friends, which was, we read it yesterday, Shadrach, Meshach, and the bad Negro, right? Remember they was going through the fiery furnace? Y'all got to read this. It's so good. Look, okay. Moreover, it was the wish of Yahuwah that Daniel should not pass through the fiery ordeal at the same time as his three friends, in order that their deliverance might not be ascribed to him. In spite of all this, Nebuchadnezzar endeavored to persuade Daniel by gentle means to worship an idol. He had the golden diadem of the high priest inserted into the mouth of an idol, and by reason of the wondrous power that resides in the holy name, or Yahuwah's holy name inscribed on the diadem. Remember I told you that the statue was animated. It wasn't just a statue like we see statues today, but the people, when they heard the sound of the flute and the lyre and the harps, the statue was actually animated, and it frightened the crap out of the people. And they was like, oh, and everybody fell down and worship. We ain't about to die, right? And so, but Dan was like, I know the secrets. I know what y'all doing. Y'all using magic, and anything that the name of Yahuwah is inscribed on will give it power. And so that's what Daniel knew, right? And so he knew that they were tricking the people. They all knew. Y'all have to go read through this. Everybody knew the power of Yahuwah's name, and once you really understand that, you will understand a lot of stuff that was written in the New Testament on what, especially in the book of Acts, on why they were beaten and they were commanded to never use the name. And what's in the name of Jesus? It was the name of Yahuwah. They were forbidden to ever use his name, because all Israel had to do was to call on the name of the mighty one that they worship, and Yahuwah always showed up for us. That's why it's so important that we know his name, right? There are so many scriptures all throughout the Old Testament where Yahuwah is talking about his very own name, not the name of a son or a prophet or anybody else that came in his name, but his very own name. He said, I am jealous over my own name, right? For my own reputation, I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to do this, and all the world is going to know that I am the only living God, right? Whew, boy, y'all better get this. Listen. Moreover, it was the wish of Yahuwah that Daniel should not pass through the fiery ordeal at the same time as his three friends, in order that their deliverance might not be ascribed to him. In spite of all this, Nebuchadnezzar endeavored to persuade Daniel by gentle means to worship an idol. He had the golden diadem of the high priest inserted into the mouth of an idol, and by reason of the wondrous power that resides in the holy name ascribed on a diadem, the idol gained the ability to speak, and it said the words, I am thy God. Thus were many seduced to worship the image. But Daniel could not be misled so easily. He secured permission from the king to kiss the idol. Laying his mouth upon the idols, he adjured the diadem in the following words. So although it looked like he was kissing the idol, he was actually talking to the diadem that was put into the idol's mouth, that held the name, that had the name of Yahuwah inscribed on it. So he got close to it. He said, listen here. Look. But Daniel could not be misled so easily. He secured permission from the king to kiss the idol. Laying his mouth upon the idols, he adjured the diadem in the following words, I am but flesh and blood, yet at the same time a messenger of Yahuwah. I therefore admonish thee, take heed that the name of the Holy One, blessed be he, may not be desecrated, and I order thee to follow me. So it happened, when the heathen came with music and song to give honor to the idol, it emitted no sound, but a storm broke loose and overturned it. On still another occasion, Nebuchadnezzar tried to persuade Daniel to worship an idol. This time, a dragon that devoured all who approached it, and therefore was adored as a god by the Babylonians. Daniel had straw mixed with nails fed to him, and the dragon ate and perished almost immediately. All this did not prevent Daniel from keeping the welfare of the king in mind continually. Hence, it was that when Nebuchadnezzar was engaged in setting his house in order, he desired to mention Daniel in his will as one of his heirs. But the Hebrew refused with the words, Far be it from me to leave the inheritance of my fathers for that of the uncircumcised. Remember, Daniel could not be bribed, right? No, king, keep your gifts. Nebuchadnezzar died after having reigned 40 years, as long as King David. The death of the tyrant brought hope and joy to many a heart, for his severity had been such that during his lifetime none dared laugh. And when he descended to Sheol, its inhabitants trembled, fearing that he had come to reign over them too. However, a heavenly voice called to him, Go down and be thou laid down with the uncircumcised. The interment of this great king was anything but what one might have expected. Okay. And for this reason, during the 7 years spent by Nebuchadnezzar among the beasts, his son Evil Merodach ruled in his stead. So remember yesterday we read when King Nebuchadnezzar lost his mind and he wanted to live like a beast among the field, where hair grew on his back and his nails grew long like eagle claws, right? While he was gone, his son was ruling. The interment of this great king was anything but what one might have expected, and for this reason, during the 7 years spent by Nebuchadnezzar among the beasts, his son, Evil Merodach, ruled in his stead. Nebuchadnezzar reappeared after his period of penance and incarcerated his son for life. When the death of Nebuchadnezzar actually did occur, Evil Merodach refused to accept the homage the nobles brought him as the new king, because he feared that his father was not dead, but had only disappeared as once before and would return again. To convince him of the groundlessness of his apprehension, the corpse of Nebuchadnezzar, badly mutilated by his enemies, was dragged throughout the streets. Shortly afterward occurred the death of Zedekiah, the dethroned king of Judah. So we remember this story. If y'all were here, we remember when they invaded, King Zedekiah was ruling, right? And they put out his eyes and stuff, right? Okay. Shortly afterward occurred the death of Zedekiah, the dethroned king of Judah. His burial took place amid great demonstrations of sympathy and mourning. The elegy over him ran thus: Alas, that King Zedekiah whom had to die, he who quaffed the lees, Lees, the lees, with all the generations before him accumulated. Zedekiah reached a good old age, for through it was, hold on, for through it was in his reign that had, I'm sorry, Zedekiah reached a good old age, for though it was in his reign that the destruction of Jerusalem took place, yet it was the guilt of the nation, not of the king, that had brought about the catastrophe. Right? Okay. So I'm gonna finish reading. This is gonna be our extra reading for today, y'all. I just gotta read this to y'all. Okay, and it's picking up where we read today in Daniel. All right. So the many tekel, right? More Parson. When Yahuwah resolved to take revenge upon Babylon for all the sufferings it had inflicted on Israel, he chose Darius and Cyrus as the agents of vengeance. Cyrus, the king of Persia, and his father-in-law Darius, the king of Media, together went up against Belshazzar, the ruler of the Chaldeans. The war lasted a considerable time, and fortune favored the first one, then the other, until finally the Chaldeans won a decisive victory. To celebrate the event, Belshazzar arranged a great banquet, which was served from the vessels taken out of the temple at Jerusalem by his father. While the king and his guests were feasting, the angel sent by Yahuwah put many tekel of parson on the wall, Aramaic words and Hebrew characters written with red ink. The angel was seen by no one but the king, his grandees, and the princes of the realm who were present at the orgy perceived nothing. The king himself did not see the form of the angel, only his awesome fingers as they traced the words that were visible to him. The interpretation given to the enigmatical words by Daniel put an end to the merrymaking of the feasters. They scattered in dread and fear, leaving none behind except the king and his attendants. In the same night, the king was murdered by an old servant who knew Daniel from the time of Nebuchadnezzar and doubted not that his sinister prophecy would be fulfilled. With the head of King Belshazzar, he betook himself to Darius and Cyrus and told them how his master had desecrated the sacred vessels, told them of the wonderful writing on the wall, and of the way it had been interpreted by Daniel. The two kings were moved by his recital to vow solemnly that they would permit the Jews to return to Palestine and would grant them the use of the temple vessels. They resumed the war against Babylonia with more energy, and Yahuwah vouchsafed them victory. They conquered the whole of Belshazzar's realm and took possession of the city of Babylon, whose inhabitants, young and old, were made to suffer death. The subjugated lands were divided between Cyrus and Darius, the latter receiving Babylon and Media, the former Chaldea, Persia, and Assyria. But this is not the whole story of the fall of Babylon. The wicked king Belshazzar arranged the banquet at which the holy vessels were desecrated in the 5th year of his reign, because he thought it wholly certain then that all danger was past the realization of Jeremiah's prophecy foretelling the return of the Hebrews to Palestine at the end of 70 years of Babylonian rule over them. Of course, we read about that in the regular canonized Bible, right? Nebuchadnezzar had governed 25 years and evil Merodach 23, leaving 5 years in the reign of Belshazzar for the fulfillment of the appointed time. Not enough that the king scoffed at Yahuwah by using the temple vessels, he needs must have the pastry for the banquet, which was given on the second day of the Passover festival, made of wheaten flour finer than that used on this day for the omer in the temple. Punishment followed hard upon the heels of the atrocity. Cyrus and Darius served as doorkeepers of the royal palace on the evening of the banquet. They had received orders from Belshazzar to admit none, though he should say he was the king himself. Belshazzar was forced to leave his apartments for a short time, and he went out unnoticed by the two doorkeepers. On his return, when he asked to be admitted, they found him dead, even when he was asseverating that he was the king. And apparently, the king didn't realize these were two kings, the king of Media and Persia, who were posing as doorkeepers to take him out. Bruh, hold on. Okay, here we go. Daniel under the Persian kings. And here we go. When we get into the day, y'all. Daniel left Belshazzar and fled to Shushtar, where he was kindly received by Cyrus, who promised him to have the temple vessels taken back to Jerusalem, provided Daniel would pray to Yahuwah to grant him success in his war with the king of Mosul. Yahuwah gave Daniel's prayer a favorable hearing, and Cyrus was true to his promise. Now Daniel received the divine charge to urge Cyrus to rebuild the temple. To this end, he was introduced to Ezra and Zerubbabel. To this end, he was introduced to Ezra and Zerubbabel the king. Ezra then went from place to place and called upon the people to return to Palestine. Sad to say, only a tribe and a half obeyed his summons. Indeed, the majority of the people were so wroth against Ezra that they sought to slay him. He escaped the peril to his life only by a divine miracle. Daniel, too, was exposed to much suffering at this time. King Cyrus cast him into a den of lions because he refused to bow down before the idol of the king. For 7 days, Daniel lay among the wild beasts, and not a hair of his head was touched. Now, when we read in scripture, remember how I tell you that the Holy Bible, the canonized 66 books of the Bible, is really just a summary of the bigger story where they didn't include everything, right? So when you read it here, it just looked like Daniel was in there just overnight, but he wasn't. He was in there a whole week, right? Which is why when the king had all his advisors and stuff who lied to him or who influenced him to make this unrevocable decree and had Daniel tossed into the lions, and that's why when them and their families were tossed in, they were devoured before they hit the bottom, because these lions were hungry. But they ain't touched Daniel. Look. Daniel, too, was exposed to much suffering at this time. King Cyrus cast him into a den of lions because he refused to bow down before the idol of the king. For 7 days, Daniel lay among the wild beasts, and not a hair of his head was touched. When the king at the end of the week found Daniel alive, he could not but acknowledge the sovereign grandeur of Yahuwah. Cyrus released Daniel and instead had his calumniators thrown to the lions. In an instant, they were rent in pieces. Hold on. Hold on, y'all. I'm trying to get. There we go. Okay, it's here. Okay, I was like, now I know this part about Habakkuk is in here. I just had to double check. Okay, it's here. We're going to get to it. It's down here. Okay, I'm going to finish reading. Okay, Cyrus released Daniel and instead had his calumniators thrown to the lions. In an instant, they were rent in pieces. In general, Cyrus fell far short of coming up to the expectations set in him for piety and justice. Though he granted permission to the Hebrews to rebuild the temple, they were to use no material but wood so that it might be easily destroyed if the Hebrews should take it into their head to rebel against him. Ooh, you sly weasel. Even in point of morals, the Persian king was not above reproach. Another time, Cyrus pressingly urged Daniel to pay homage to the idol Baal. As proof of the divinity of the idol, the king advanced the fact that it ate the dishes set before it, a report spread by the priests of Baal who entered the temple of the idol at night through subterranean passages, themselves ate up the dishes and then attributed their disappearance to the appetite of the god. But Daniel was too shrewd to be misled by a fabricated story. He had the ashes strewn upon the floor of the temple and the footprints visible the next morning convinced the king of the deceit practiced by the priest. And this right here, these couple sentences, is a short summation of what the book of Baal and the Dragon is actually about, right? Because tomorrow we're going to read that Baal and the Dragon, and it's going to give details on what he just said. That's what Baal and the Dragon is all about. The dragon is Baal, right? It's one of the idols that they had set up and they worship and they tricked the king. They said, no, this idol is living. He's eating all the food sacrifices we're bringing and setting before him, right? And so that's why Cyrus was like, nope, Daniel, my God lives. Daniel's like, no, king, my God lives. And let me prove to you that your people lying to you and your God is really no God at all, right? And so Daniel, in his wisdom that Yahuwah had given him, he said, let's do all this. And he said, and I want you, king, I want you to seal this door with your own signet ring. And we'll come back here in the morning and we're going to see if the seal has been broken, right? So when they showed up the next morning and the seal wasn't broken and they opened the door and the king saw that the food that they had put in there before his idol the day before he sealed it up, when he saw that all that food had been devoured, King Cyrus like lost his mind. Daniel, I told you, my God lives, my God reigns. Daniel standing there unbothered. King, you done? You done? King, are you done? He said, okay. You done? You done giving your praises? Now that you're done, I need you to direct your eyes to the floor. And we'll pick up there tomorrow on what he saw. But Daniel was too shrewd to be misled by a fabricated story. He had ashes strewn upon the floor of the temple, and the footprints visible the next morning convinced the king of the deceit practiced by the priests. Pleasant relations did not continue to subsist forever between Cyrus and Darius. A war broke out between them. Remember, this is father and son. Cyrus and Darius. A war broke out between them, which Cyrus lost life and lands. Fearing Darius, Daniel fled to Persia, but an angel of Yahuwah appeared to him with the message, fear not the king, not unto him will I surrender thee. Shortly afterward, he received a letter from Darius reading as follows, come to me, Daniel, fear not. I shall be even kinder to thee than Cyrus was. Accordingly, Daniel returned to Shushtar and was received with great consideration by Darius. One day, the king chanced to remember the sacred garments brought by Nebuchadnezzar out of the temple at Jerusalem to Babylon. They had vanished, and no trace of them could be discovered. The king suspected Daniel of having had something to do with their disappearance. It booted little that he protested his innocence. He was cast into prison. Yahuwah sent an angel who was told to blind Darius, telling him at the same time that he was deprived of the light of his eyes because he was keeping the pious Daniel endurance, and sight would be restored to him only if Daniel interceded for him. Let me remind you of something as well. Remember, back in Egypt, remember the title of the video, you go find it in the title of the video, Measure for Measure. I did it. You'll see my picture. I said Measure for Measure. That video and the video before it, and I believe the video after it, it talks about, hold on, I'm almost done. I had these last little couple paragraphs. It talks about the actual deliverance from the first Egypt, right? And all of the plagues that Yahuwah had brought on the nation of Egypt was in direct measure, in direct proportion of what they had done to Israel. So just right here, like here, when King Darius threw Daniel into the dungeon, you remember dungeons, jails were black. Like they ain't got all the amenities that you got when you're thrown into the dungeon today. You get cable TV, lights, you got a toilet, you get food service you 3 times a day, you know, if you ain't in lockdown or, you know, they put you in a hole or something. But It was dark in the dungeon. So because he threw Daniel into darkness, and because the Egyptians were in the habit of throwing the Hebrews into dark dungeons, that's why the plague of the 3 days of darkness came upon Egypt. This is why Darius was blinded, right? Yahuwah doles out punishment measure for measure. So whatever is done to us, Yahuwah does it to the captors and the tormentors of those who did those things to us. Always remember that, people. Always remember that. Measure for measure. That's how Yahuwah deals, right? Okay. I just want to remind y'all of that just in case. Listen. Yahuwah sent an angel. Yahuwah sent an angel who was to blind Darius, telling him at the same time that he was deprived of the light of his eyes. No. Hey, guys, do that over there. No, he didn't. Go eat the vitamins over there. Go. What are you doing?
People always do this. They're actually solving this question.
Get out of here, boy. Why you can't trust me?
Mom, did Bella already have some of these?
What?
Did Bella?
Go answer.
She lies.
Y'all move. Wait to get those when I'm done. Hold on, y'all. I'm almost done. All right, y'all, listen. Yahuwah sent an angel who was to blind Darius, telling him at the same time that he was deprived of the light in his eyes because he was keeping the pious Daniel in endurance, and sight would be restored to him only if Daniel interceded for him. The king at once released Daniel, and the two together journeyed to Jerusalem to pray on the holy place for the restoration of the king. An angel appeared to Daniel and announced to him that his prayer had been heard, but the king had to wash his eyes and vision would return to them. So it happened. Darius gave thanks to Yahuwah, and in his gratitude assigned the tithe of his grain to the priests and Levites. Besides, he testified his appreciation to Daniel by loading him down with gifts, and both returned to Shustar. Quit smacking my ear, boy. The recovery of the king convinced many of his subjects of the omnipotence of Yahuwah, and they converted to Hebrew. Listen, don't distract the readers. Move, I like you. Following the advice of Daniel, Darius appointed the triumvirate to take charge of the administration of his realm. I'm sorry, y'all. Listen, guys, stop. I'm almost done.
I'm not eating.
I know. I'll let y'all wave and stuff in a minute. Let me finish. I got like this last 2 paragraphs to read. I'm sorry, y'all.
Nice.
Bear with me. Shush. Chill. Following the advice of Daniel, Darius appointed a triumvirate to take charge of the administration of his realm, and Daniel was made the chief of the council of 3. His high dignity, he was second to none, but to the king himself. His high dignity, he was second to none, but the king himself exposed him to envy and hostility on all sides. His enemies plotted his ruin. With cunning, they induced the king to sign an order. Here it is, y'all. We're about to get to Habakkuk. With cunning, they induced the king to sign an order attaching the penalty of death to prayers addressed to any god or any man other than Darius. Though the order did not require Daniel to commit a sin, he preferred to give his life for the honor of the one God rather than omit his devotions to him. When his jealous enemy surprised him doing his prayers, he did not interrupt himself. He was dragged before the king, who refused to give credence to the charge against Daniel. Meanwhile, the hour after noon prayer arrived, and in the presence of the king and his princes, Daniel began to perform his devotions right there. He just started doing his devotions to Yah right in front of the king, right? Despite the decree. This naturally rendered unavailing all efforts made by the king to save his friend from death. Daniel was cast into a pit full of lions. The entrance of the pit was closed up with a rock, which had all of its own accord rolled from Palestine to protect him against any harm contemplated by his enemies. The ferocious beasts welcomed the pious Daniel like dogs, fawning upon their master on his return home, licking his hand and wagging their tails. While this was passing in Babylon, an angel appeared to the prophet Habakkuk in Judea. He ordered the prophet to bring Daniel the food he was about to carry to his laborers in the field. Astonished, Habakkuk asked the angel how he would carry it so great a distance, whereupon he was seized by his hair and in a moment sat down before Daniel. They dined. Hey, chill. They dined together, and then the angel transported Habakkuk back to his place in Palestine. Early in the morning, Darius went to the pit of lions to discover the fate of Daniel. Remember, 7 days had already passed by the time this happened, right? Darius went to the pit to discover the fate of Daniel. Go wash your face, Bella. The king called his name, but he received no answer because Daniel would get down, get down, get down. Get down. Yeah. Watch this. Get down. Get down. Get down. Listen. The king called his name, but he received no answer because Daniel was reciting the Shema at that moment. After having spent the night giving praise and adoration to Yahuwah, seeing that he was still alive, the king summoned the enemies of Daniel to the pit. It was their opinion that the lions had not been hungry, therefore Daniel was still unhurt. The king commanded them to put the beasts to the test with their own persons. The result was that the 122 enemies of Daniel, together with their wives and children, numbering 244 persons, were torn in shreds by 1,464 lions. The miraculous escape of Daniel brought him more distinguished consideration and greater honors than before. The king published the wonders done by Yahuwah in all parts of his land and called upon the people to betake themselves to Jerusalem and help in the erection of the temple. Daniel entreated the king to relieve him of the duties of his position, for the performance of which he no longer felt himself fit on the account of his advanced age. The king consented on condition that Daniel designate a successor worthy of him. His choice fell upon Zerubbabel. Loaded with rich presents and amid public demonstrations designed to honor him, Daniel retired from public life. He settled in the city of Shushan, where he ruled until his end. Though he was no prophet, Yahuwah vouchsafed him a knowledge. Listen, Yahuwah vouchsafed to him a knowledge of the end time not granted to his friends, the prophets Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, and even he, in the fullness of his years, lost all memory of the revelation which he had been favored. Right? So listen, all the things that are being revealed today, remember how it tells us, well, we'll see when we get to the end, we'll get to that in the next couple of days. It's going to say all those things that was revealed today and those things that wasn't revealed, that Yahuwah didn't give the interpretation for, he said, seal these up because this revelation is for the end time, meaning that when that time comes, it will be revealed to them. But I'm going to let you see what's going to happen, right? So that's why you see all this stuff happening with the children of Israel, and we're finding our way and we're remembering who we are. And Yahuwah is revealing to us today the truth of his word, how things were tampered with, how you got all these lies added through this book that they canonized and called the Bible, which they named after a God that they worship. In Babylon, that's what the Bible is named after. And it's taking some of the holy writings of some of the scriptures and the lives and the detail from some of the prophets throughout Israel, and they put it together and they added lies. They added lies into the priesthood. They added lies into everything from the old all the way to the new, right? And it's only those who are really sincere about seeking Yah and seeking his face. And I can tell y'all from personal experience, right? You can just read and read and read. Now reading, it'll bring some understanding so you can understand all the characters and everything. But revelations of the truth and 11 is not really illuminated to you until you, I'm gonna just say it like this, until you really begin to add some fasting to your life, right? Because a lot of the wisdom that I have and a lot of things that I glean, I get it while I'm fasting. I kid you not, right? And that's a principle that they teach you in the New Testament. Although it's a parable and stuff, I'll give them credit for that. They put some good stuff in there that you can still use. There's principles underlying fasting, right? So when JC said in the New Testament, remember they was trying to cast the demon out the little boy who was having seizures, constantly thrown into the fire. Master, look, can you help us? You know, and then he come, all right, go ahead, get on up out of here, live a good life, right? And they got with him. They said, listen, we've been trying all day to cast this demon out of this boy, but you come and 2 shakes of a feather, this boy is set free. How come we couldn't do this? He said, because some things do not come out except for by prayer and fasting. It wasn't that the boy who was demon possessed or the one who was experiencing all the problems, it wasn't him who needed to fast, although he could, but he was a child, right? At that point, you can, if you're possessed of different things, you can yourself fast and be delivered. But somebody who is helping you through deliverance, it was his disciples he was talking to. You can't just lay your hands on them and pray, right? Your life has to go up another level where you can see what's happening, and then you can talk directly to the entity that is causing this uproar in their life. He said this type of pollution or this type of possession, it doesn't come out except by prayer and fasting from the one who has come to cast it out, right? So wisdom will come to you on how to deal directly and very specifically with a situation when you begin to fast. You have to deny yourself those things that causes your flesh to be comfortable, right? And wisdom doesn't come until you begin to do that, right? There's only a certain amount of wisdom that you're going to get, but when you're ready to slay this monster, you're ready to sacrifice this beast right here, called the flesh, and love to feed itself so many good things in so many areas, whether it's the eyes, the mouth, the ears, or other places where you can insert things into. When you set that off for a little bit and you fast from all those things that give your flesh comfortability and pleasure in more ways than one, then you will be ready to receive some unseen information, and you will begin to realize what's going on around you, and tricks that are being played, and magic and things that are being spells and things that are being cast on you and your family, and all the games and stuff that are being played with the people around you. That type of wisdom ain't coming to you until you're ready for that, right? You can make yourself ready though. Add some fasting to your prayers, right? Don't just be praying for everything, right? Because sometimes your prayers can be amiss, and Yahuwah he even told Jeremiah, we talked about it because we read, he said, Jeremiah, don't pray no more for these people. I'm sick of it. They prayers, no, because if they had been adding some fasting to their prayers, they wouldn't even be in this predicament right now. So nope, I ain't hearing it. Don't say another word. Don't say another word about them. I ain't listening, Jeremiah. Don't pray no more for them. So I hope y'all enjoyed the reading for today. Oh, we didn't get to fossilized stuff. So let me cross this out. I'm put LOJ, ladies of the Jews. So, but I really wanted to read that to you. So we're gonna read a little bit more, just kind of refresh you as we're finishing up the book of Daniel. I'll be adding the missing pieces. What just spilled? I'll be adding the missing pieces of Daniel in there so you can get the full gist and everything of what happened, right? And there's still some missing pieces that's not added in here, but what they found, especially when you get the Legends of the Jews, if you don't have this, matter of fact, I'll put the link to this. Matter of fact, if you go back to that video from April, any videos and from the beginning of the year, from January, how long did it take us to read this? Like 4 months? Any of the first 4 months, any of the videos from the first 4 months of this year, it will have the link in the description box for every single video for this book. Just go click on that. Like I said, I share it again here. Link, LOJ link. And you can go get a copy of this. And it has the link to where if you don't want to purchase a copy of it, you can just pull it up online, right? You can just go to the website, and the entire book is what? It was over 500 pages. Yeah, it's over 500 pages, but we read through the entire book first half of this year. Go get a copy. It helped fill in some of the missing pieces that was not canonized. But this right here is a compilation of the stories or the things that happened that all the other nations are aware of, right? If you read the introduction to this, it'll actually tell you about that. He only canonized what was common knowledge to all the nations, right? It's the common knowledge to all the nations, but they chose not to canonize this. They just pulled bits and pieces out, and they just hung. You take this. It's enough. It's enough to get you back to Yah, but there's so much more than just this. Everything is not in the canonized 66 books of the Bible. A lot of it has been tampered with, and a lot is missing from the history, right? So I'm just saying, you ain't got to go get it. I ain't getting paid for recommending these things. I'm just sharing with y'all the resources I come across that has helped me a lot, and that I know to be of value and a truth. And I give you the same links I purchased mine from. But I try, if it's a free link, I try and share with you the free links. So those who can't afford to go purchase it, at least you can find it online, right? All right, y'all. So with that being said, it is Wednesday, August the 25th, 2021, day 242 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, another 3-year consecutive day count, day 911. We read Daniel 5, 6, and 7, and we read the portions from the Legends of the Jews that wasn't canonized to get a bigger story of what was happening going on in Daniel's time, right? So now I'll share the link for that as well. So I'll share the website link so you can click on it. And if you want to go read over it again for yourself, you can just go right to it. It's the whole section about Daniel. Matter of fact, with the link that I share, it has a table of contents. So if you want to just jump right to it, you can, right? And also it has all the stuff about the first Exodus is divided up into sections. So if you know the sections of the Bible pretty well, you will know which volume to go to. So what we read in Daniel was in volume 4. Yeah, it's in volume 4. But it's all in that same website. It's really thick. It's 4 volumes put together. All right, y'all. So with that being said, let's go ahead and do this blessing. And hold on, I'll go back and I think somebody left me a comment. I'll go back and check it in a minute. Hold on. Let's do this blessing. Because I know we over our time today. I know, y'all. I'm sorry. But I really wanted to read that. If you gotta go to work, go to work. Don't be stealing time from Caesar. Run unto Caesar what is due unto him. Give to Yah what belongs to him. This is recording. You can come back and watch this, y'all. Don't have me getting y'all in trouble. Y'all supposed to be on the clock for the man. Remember, the first 21 verses of Numbers chapter 6 is a Nazarite vow. Man or woman can take it. Verse 22, and Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise you shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, Yahuwah will kneel before us, presenting gifts, and will guard us with a hedge of protection. Yahuwah will illuminate the wholeness of his being towards us, bringing order, and he will provide us with love, sustenance, and friendship. Yahuwah will lift up his wholeness of being and look upon us, and he will set in place all we need to be whole and complete. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Right? So that is the more appropriate rendering of the blessing. But here is what your ears are normally what you normally hear. And Yahuwah spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise you shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, May Yahuwah bless us and keep us. May Yahuwah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. When I saw that the first one I read was a more accurate rendering of what Yahuwah was saying, I decided to switch it out. Right? So, but just in case, like, they don't sound like that. They don't say that, but in Hebrew, if you go and this is a more accurate rendering of what he was saying. So, just in case you didn't know, because I know a couple people had asked, and I shared it in a few videos ago when we started doing it. All right, y'all. So with that being said, let me just double check. Hold on. Sonya, Grand Rising family. Oh, we got a couple new people. Hey, y'all, the new people on YouTube. Thanks for coming to hang out. Amen, Ali. Shalom. Auntie, Belinda Brown, Grand Rising. Joy, Shalom. Dan, peace and blessings. Ooh, just double checking. Dream Sky Level. Girl, how long you been here watching me? She said, we got time. Yeah, I can send that to you, Joy. She said, I like the way you say the blessing. Can you send that to me? Yeah. And I'll post it again. I'll pin it in the comment section. What time we at? An hour and 24 minutes. Listen. Dream Sky Lover asked me, y'all. She said, just double checking. Do you believe in Yashua is the Messiah? This is how I explain this, y'all, based on what Yahuwah has said. Okay. Now everybody doesn't necessarily agree with me, and I understand that. I used to believe it the way a lot of people believe it today until I really started reading over and over and over again, and I started fasting, and I started realizing some stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, this don't say that. This don't say this, right? Okay, so now first we gotta identify who Yahuwah said the Messiah was, right? Yahuwah said, and I'll post all these scriptures for y'all. Y'all just go double check behind me, right? We should be able to talk about this, right? Some people we can't talk about it because they just ready to fight me. You denied the Christ. No, not really, because I'm showing you what Scripture says. I know what we hear, but let's do our own due diligence and go read what Yahuwah says, right? And I keep all these scriptures saved now because so many people they ask me the same questions. I'm like, okay, based on scripture, this is what it says. And if we keep it in its proper context, this is what it says, right? So now, Yahuwah is just like who Yahuwah said his son is, right? When Yahuwah says his son, he's referring to the whole of Israel, not a single person. It's referring to the entire nation. What you begin to know as you begin to take time and read through the scriptures, what the Old Testament says when it's talking about nations of people, when you get to the New Testament, it takes those nations of people and condenses it into one person, right? And so now people believe that Yahuwah's son is one single person, right? And even in the Old Testament, when Yahuwah uses a singular form, if you keep reading and watch him, how he explains the dreams and the visions that he gives to people, he expands and he interprets what he said to you, just like what we did with Daniel. Like he saw one that looked like the Son of Man, and he was given the kingdom to rule, and his kingdom was eternal and it was forever, right? But if you get down to the dream and interpret it, that one who looked like the Son of Man was who? The saints of the Most High, not one person, but the entire nation of people, was all Yahuwah's people. They were ruling and reigning with Yah, not ruling and reigning with Christ. But I get the terminology, people, different terminologies. We can't agree on terminologies, but it's Yahuwah's people ruling and reigning with him, right? Okay, so now that we understand that and we know who the son is, it's the same thing with who the Messiah is, the true Messiah. Yahuwah said, I am Israel's Messiah. He said, all of you were sold into captivity, so nobody can come get you but me, right? And there's a whole host of scriptures where he constantly keeps repeating that I am your savior. I am your redeemer. I am the one who is going to come save you, right? So now that we see all those, we also must look at some of the other things that is being taught a little wrong, right? It's the sacrifices, right? I know that this is hard for some people to take sometimes, but it's right there in your face if you would read it. With the sacrifices, right? When you get into the New Testament, there is this human sacrifice that happened with JC. Now, they crucified him on the cross and everything, but when you hear teachers teach this in the church, they say he was a Passover lamb. They started adding a bunch of stuff where you don't necessarily read that in the New Testament. Say he was crucified and he was rose and all that stuff, but all that stuff about the Passover lamb and all this foreshadowing, some stuff Paul said, Paul was a slick talker talking out the side of his mouth sometime. And I don't necessarily agree with everything that Paul said because it goes against what Yahuwah has said, right? And I noticed that because I spent years living in the Old Testament, right? I spent these last few years living in the Old Testament, just like I spent the first half of my life living in the New Testament, only the New Testament. I go back and check the Old Testament, but I wasn't really doing my true due diligence with making sure it all lined up until a few years ago, right? I'm like, wait a minute, there are some things that are not quite right here. What is going on, right? So I'm saying all this dream so you can kind of get to where I'm going, right? So do I believe that Yeshua is the Messiah? I believe that Yahuwah is the Messiah, just like he said right now. With that being said, he is the Messiah and he does use people here on the earth. But who he uses to deliver his people, as you can see his pattern throughout all scripture, he doesn't bring somebody, not saying that he can't, but let's just look at his MO and how he operates. Who he uses to deliver his people every time they need to be delivered is somebody who is within the nation, who was born and who is currently alive in that generation, i.e., Moses. Then you got Esther. Then you got Nehemiah. You got Ezra. You got all of these who are Messiah types or Messiah figures, right? They can be labeled as Messiahs or deliverers or even through the books of Judges and Kings. It's always somebody that Yahuwah raises up from the midst of the people who are in that current bondage, and he uses them. He fills them with his spirit and the will on what to do to lead the people out and to return them home. Right. So all of these things, right? We can talk about it. I may not be 100% right. I'm sure I have some things wrong, but at least we can talk about it, right? Iron sharpens iron. So I believe that Yahuwah is the Messiah. Now, when we talk about JC a little bit more, some people they just change his name, right? Because we know hardhead, shalom. So we know that they changed his name. People want to argue it. The J didn't exist. It wasn't Jesus. It was Yeshua. It was Yahawashai or Yahushua. Okay, I get it, right? We don't need to argue that for real. I mean, I used to until I really understood. I'm like, man, we worried about the wrong thing, right? But we also have to look at what Yahuwah, now we look at the Messiah and what's going to happen and what Yahuwah says is going to happen when his people is delivered from the last and final captivity, right? What are some things that Yahuwah said would happen? Now we have to look at all these things and we look at Jesus or Yeshua, Yahusha, whatever you want to call him. We have to look and see, did he fit any of these things that Yahuwah said would happen when he comes to deliver? Can we honestly say he fulfilled any of those things that Yahuwah laid out? No, he hasn't. He hasn't. First of all, we're still in captivity. That's a big one right there. Okay, so what happened when you came? What did you teach us when you came? Now, there are some things that can be gleaned. There really are, right? There's some things that can be gleaned from the story in the New Testament of Jesus. It really can. There's some good principles that you can glean from there, right? But as him being the Messiah, I would ask you, what did he fulfill? Matter of fact, what did Yahuwah say would happen? You tell me what said what happened. You can find it. It's not hidden. It's in plain sight. You can go in the Old Testament, read through the books of the prophets, right? Read through all the books of prophets. Go through Glenn. You can even just do a quick scripture reference search, right? And tell us those things and if he fulfilled any of those things. He didn't. So what was his purpose? What did he do? Right? If we hop over to Isaiah, matter of fact, we can use one of the main chapters where church teaches you. This is a foretelling of Jason, even the Isaiah chapter 7, where they say this is a foretelling of the virgin birth. All of that stuff is wrong. All of that is wrong. That is not what those things are, because all of those chapters actually give the interpretation of what happened. It wasn't a virgin, right? We know the virgin birth story. They use Isaiah chapter 7 and kind of, but that's wrong. They interpret it wrong. And if you have a good Bible with footnotes or precepts, it'll tell you that this woman wasn't a virgin. This woman that they were referring to was the prophet Isaiah's wife. That child that was born in that time period, and Yahuwah gave markers. The sign wasn't that the virgin would give birth, right? First of all, she wasn't a virgin. She was having sex with her husband, the prophet Isaiah. Matter of fact, they referred to his wife as a prophetess, right? The sign was that when this child is born, within a couple years, that he would be eating an abundance of honey and butter. And that was a representation that there was going to be so much food in that land, because the whole story was about two kings. King Ahaz was afraid that he was going to be invaded by two kings, right? And Isaiah was telling him what Yahuwah had said. He said, listen, tell this to him. He said, and I'm gonna give him a sign. But King Ahaz, he was too afraid to pick a sign. So Yahuwah said, I'm gonna give him a sign myself. This woman is going to have a child. And when she has the child, here is the sign. When this child is born, before he's able to know right from wrong, right? And we know if we have children, when do children begin to understand right from wrong? The first couple years. So in essence, before this child reaches age 2, maybe 3, maybe 3, if nothing is wrong with the child, this will have happened. And these two kings that you are so afraid of are going to be no more, right? They're going to flee, and you're going to have an abundance of all these things that you're experiencing shortages on now. That's what it was, people, right? But people take scriptures and chop them and screw them. And when you don't go back and read it for yourself, you're carried away with every wind of doctrine, right? So if we keep all of this, all that we've learned up until this point, when we get to the New Testament, we would think something is a little suspect when they say Jesus was the Messiah, because he does not fit the description of what Yahuwah said would happen during this time. I know this sounds like blasphemy to people, but I'm just saying, do your due diligence. Let's talk about it together. Let's go through the scriptures. Let's walk through it together. And let's just look at what we should be looking for, because we're the ones that's going to benefit, and we are going to be the ones who perish if we get it wrong, right? And I'm not into the habit of leading people astray. I'm searching daily, just like y'all are searching daily. But according to Isaiah chapter 53, he did not fulfill these things, right? The suffering servant, once we identify who that suffering servant was, and it wasn't JC suffering on the cross, right? Because wasn't JC a righteous man? What did Yahuwah say about righteous men dying for the sins of the wicked? Yahuwah said it was an abomination. He kept repeating it. He said, never would I ever sin. Yahuwah said this. That's why I take issue. Wait a minute, Josiah, stop. That's why I take issue with some of this stuff, right? Because I'm tuning myself to the voice of Yah. Yahuwah said that never would a righteous person die for the sins of the wicked. He said, because it's an abominable thing. And we also read through when he goes through and he's talking in the book of Ezekiel, right? He said if Noah had stood up, and if Job had stood up, and who else was it? If Noah, Job, and it was another one. He said if they stood up in place for their sons and daughters, he said they would only be able to save themselves, but they would not be able to save their sons and daughters if their sons and daughters were living a wicked lifestyle, right? The wicked will die for their own sins, and the righteous will be saved by their own righteousness. But if the wicked turn away from their wickedness and begin to live righteous lives, then they would live, right? But if the righteous turn away from their righteousness and begin to live wickedly, none of what they did previously, living a righteous life, would be accounted to them. They would die in their sins if they do not repent and return, right? So when you get to Isaiah chapter 53, the suffering servant, if you read down further, and it starts giving you an interpretation of what it said at the beginning portion of the suffering servant, kings shut their mouths at what they begin to find out and how Yahuwah stands up for his people, right? And how Yahuwah's people is going to come to themselves, right? And they're going to begin to teach the nations, right? And they're going to give them knowledge and wisdom, and they're going to reproduce righteousness by their knowledge, right? So we know that I mean, he taught. Okay, he may have had that one, right? But it talks about his descendants, right? He died without children, right? He died without children, and it goes on. If you read Isaiah 53, it gives these list of things of what's going to happen, and for the people who are the light to the nations, what would happen? He didn't fulfill those things, so he may have given some wisdom to us on some things, but some things he scripture says that he is saying the exact opposite of what Yahuwah has told us to do. There are some things in there that are baffling to me, especially when we get to the communion portion, right? I'm trying to explain to you why I believe the way I believe now, based on what scripture says and the research and stuff that I'm doing, and trying to really do my due diligence and line things up.
Hurry, take a bath.
Okay, and line things up the way Yahuwah has said it, right? I use Yahuwah as my ultimate authority. Anybody, I don't care who they are. They say they're a savior, pastor, teacher, preacher, apostle. Let's see if what you said lines up with what the authority, the creator of heaven and earth, Yahuwah himself has said. If it doesn't line up with what he says, I'm watching you. I'm taking issue with what you're saying, right? And some of them are really good with mixing error and leaven with the loaf and with truth, So I'm watching all that stuff, and I'm looking at it and I'm picking it apart, right? I've lived the first half of my life in so much deception growing up in a church that I ain't for nobody shenanigans nowadays, right? I have a household full of children that we have to teach appropriately and teach the ways of Yah. And I don't want to pass any kind of lies and any kind of leaven down to them in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So I believe that Yahuwah himself is the Messiah. Do I believe Yahuwah left his throne and came in human flesh and died? I know this some people are going to unsubscribe, but I'm going to tell you what Yahuwah said. Yahuwah said, I am not man that I should lie, neither am I flesh and blood that I should have need to repent. So that kind of, it brings you in contradiction with he left his throne, was born flesh, and he died on the cross, right? That's contradictions. It doesn't make sense, because that whole premise that they're using for the virgin birth, which comes from Isaiah chapter 7, which we have looked at and is clearly not foretelling of a future birth of a Messiah, was talking about Isaiah's son who was born by the prophet Isaiah's wife a couple years later. Guys, where are you getting this stuff from? Who's giving you this type of revelation, right? I'm just saying. So do I believe Yahusha is the Messiah? I believe Yahuwah is the Messiah, just like he said, right? And so it's a bunch of scriptures. I'll share all of those with you. So I hope I answered your question. That's who I believe what Yahuwah said. Yahuwah said he himself is our Messiah. So it's a lot of stuff that's being done, especially with some of the things that the government is doing, Project Bluebeam and all these other things, how they're able to make holograms and things in the sky. Some people, if you don't get this under control, if you're not watching, you could possibly be fooled, right? Some people looking for spaceships. They're calling these the chariots of Yah. I'm like, okay. But Yahuwah said that the righteous would inherit the earth, right? Some people is looking to be swooped up out of here. You might be walking a very fine line, right? You might be one of the ones that gladly get up on these spaceships, right? This alien invasion, because it's not just Christians that believe this. It's a whole nother sect of people that believe in this alien invasion. They call it something else, or a rapture type thing. They're looking for this too. How are you different from the Christians, or how are the Christians different from this sect of people that's looking for otherworldly beings to come get them? I'm just saying, y'all, we got to make sense of all this stuff. If we work together, we can figure it out. And as we add fasting to our prayer, seeking Yahuwah will open our eyes. We just got to make sure we're not being fooled and let smooth sounding words of things that sound good, the things that just we've been taught forever, because you could have been taught something forever and it still be wrong. The masses all the time is not right. I'm just saying we need to really double check and make sure this is not one of these things, because um, we're going to be the ones who have to personally pay for it, whether we're going to benefit from the truth or we're going to die because of lies. I'm not in the habit of wanting to die or practicing death in any kind of way, right? So with that being said, y'all, I'm out of here. I know people got to go to work. We are way over our time for the day, but thank y'all for hanging out. Got to go. I love y'all. And I'll post all the stuff that I just said. Do I have Google Docs? Yes, I do. Yeah, I'll put it in there and I'll make sure it's like a clickable link so you can pull it up, Joy. All right, y'all. With that being said, I love y'all. I see y'all tomorrow bright and early, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace.